Today's video will attempt to bring together various things that have slipped through the cracks over the past few days. First, let's take a look at Wikileaks, who posted this to their Twitter on the 22nd of June 2018. If you happen to have seen my previous video about the New York professor who doxed and spread the dox of almost 1,600 officials, you have an idea of how bad this really is. Here is their website hosting all of this personal information. It is a searchable database with pictures and names of all of these people, including their company, their location, their job location, as well as what school they attended. Some people have more information on them than others. What is interesting is how user-friendly this database is, as if it was made for your average, less than tech-savvy person. This information would not be so bad if there weren't people like Tom Arnold organizing protests at elementary schools. This specimen of a human being, Tom Arnold, an actor no one can seem to remember, is desperately trying to be relevant as it is something that he has never actually achieved. He isn't the only one that thinks that protests are a way to get their message across. It's also important to remember this post by Peter Fonda, which will likely be remembered longer than the person who actually posted it. Ironically, this tweet was probably more infamous than he will ever be. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nelson, a person I don't think anybody had heard of until these protesters descended on her, was pushed out of a restaurant by protesters, followed home, and then heckled, screaming, "No justice, no sleep," throughout the long hours of the night. She was also called a child snatcher. Sarah Sanders was also asked to leave a restaurant because she works for the president. These are the people that Wikileaks felt it necessary to give out personal information of. This isn't about transparency or helping people against a corrupt government. These people are honest employees of the government, not politicians, and even if they were, it wouldn't be right either. Even if it was a database of Antifa members, I don't believe it would be right for an entity like Wikileaks to share this information with people that are eager to do others harm. WikiLeaks just put American citizens in danger, and I think it's safe to assume that they have been compromised. There are some out there that are making some predictable comparisons about these people, and it's important to remember that the same politicians who have screamed about the enforcement of these policies were perfectly fine with putting them in place. That means that they either didn't know what they were putting into effect, or they didn't care. Or maybe they knew, and they were just exploiting it at the moment to push their political career. From here, we will move to our next story. As you have likely heard, the story behind this image was not as it was portrayed. At first, the media said that the girl was separated from her parents, and then it turns out that that didn't happen and that she did not leave her mother's side. Then we come to find out that the woman left home with her daughter without the father's knowledge and paid a smuggler $6,000 to get her and her daughter across the border. Imagine how far $6,000 can go in Mexico towards raising a family. The media was so desperate to pull at everyone's emotions that they didn't even bother to get the full story first. Wasn't the first time, certainly won't be the last. Of course, the internet had some fun with the image, adding some things for comedic effect. The propagandists that run cable news have been so desperate to make you feel bad for not falling for their little emotional trap. This has caused so many to showcase their lack of sympathy like a badge of honor. At the end of the day, the rules are rules. And if people attempt to circumvent the law, they should expect to be held to it, just like anybody else. And now we have #DropTheB. Haven't heard of it? The image boards have yet again convinced a community to turn in on itself, starting a hashtag that would eventually work its way from satire to reality. People are now calling for the organization to be called LGBTQIA+, dropping the well-known third letter of the original acronym, which has evolved like Tetsuo from Akira. Why would anyone have a problem with the B? Well, the B implies that there are only two genders, and as you know, being a man and being a woman is just a social construct. Gender is actually on a spectrum, and to say otherwise is just spouting harmful dialogue. What's so amusing about all of this to me was that this all started as a joke, but it was eventually taken up by people who were so far out there that they actually agreed with the satirical versions of themselves. Speaking of satirical things that became reality, The World Health Organization has declared that transgenderism is no longer a mental illness, to the praise of the mainstream media and the Twitter mafia. You have to consider the statistics, speaking euphemistically, and consider that the factor behind those statistics are now considered completely normal. You know what isn't normal, though, according to the same organization declared in the same week? Playing video games. The WHO defines a gaming disorder as having 3 major characteristics that experts say are similar to substance use disorders and gambling disorder. One is that the gaming behavior takes precedence over other activities to the extent that other activities are taken to the periphery. Well, there you have it, folks. The tables are now turned. Now let's take a look at a few short amusing things. This is Melania Trump going to the border, wearing a bit of a provocative jacket. Does she care? I wonder if anyone asked. I love the jacket mostly because I love it when a troll manifests in the real world. I can't decide if this was Melania calling out hypocrisy or if it was an unintentional fashion decision on her part. It looks like she could have painted the words on her jacket herself, though, which is kind of a hallmark of supposed high-tier fashion. Next, we have Ron Perlman. Now, I've heard that Ron Perlman was really cool, but I can't remember who lied to me. Here are one of his many posts to Twitter, in this one sounding like a teenage girl, and others like a teenage boy who identifies as black. Yo, little Donnie, is that what you want? To see a grown man cry? Referring to himself, of course. Hey Ronnie, aren't you worth millions of dollars? Don't you have friends that agree with you politically that are also worth millions of dollars? Ever thought of doing anything to help anyone else besides literally shedding tears on Twitter? How old are you? If you can find the time, Ron Perlman is the living embodiment of Trump derangement syndrome, and I would heavily encourage you to go onto his Twitter profile and look at the pathetic things that he posts. I have seen 8-year-olds with an apparent higher T count than this guy. Must have taken him a year to grow that beard. And finally, we have Morning Joe. Last, but certainly not least, you might know of Joe Scarborough. He co-hosts a morning show on MSNBC with his fiancée Mika. Joe was once a politician himself before he retired to spend more time with his children. Well, to spend more time as a cable TV morning news guy. Here's a clip of Morning Joe from just a few days ago, of the host, Mika Brzezinski, reacting when her co-host and fiancé Joe Scarborough tries to hold her hand.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Joe. Joe's back. He's here.
Can I drink this
I know.
water?
Sometimes he doesn't
Did you just not get the water? Yeah, it was good, huh?
He's here.
I do parables, too.
It's great to have you back.
Does he walk with it?
We did lots of fighting over issues.
Just pay attention to both the expression and the reaction of Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough's face.
So it should be a good show.
Priceless.
No, we did not.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Never fight.
Uh-huh.
No,
don't do that. Okay, not on the air. Not on the air. What are you doing? It's 6:03.
Willie, can I ask you a question?
Uh-oh. I don't know.
We're engaged. We're engaged. I mean, we've been engaged now for like 13 years.
I think it's clear at this point who wears the pants in this relationship and who wears the tiny little dress.
Do you think I should be able to hold her hand at this point in the engagement?
With her consent.
If you'll be quiet, I'll hold your hand.
I don't even know what that means.
So I could do the news.
The absolute state of Joe Scarborough. Let's just hope Mika doesn't end up in Joe's office, if you can pick up what I'm laying down. His smile, his optimism, gone. I guess it's time to dust off that old acoustic guitar sitting in the corner of the room, eh, Joe? Time to make yet another top 10 hit.
Once in your life, you may get the chance to stand against a column of tanks, holding up your hand.
Sorry.
I was going to rip on Joe Scarborough's official Vivo YouTube subscriber count, But wouldn't you know it, he took it down. If I remember correctly, he had something like 7,000 subs. I looked at it on a live stream back in January or February. All of his uploads of his songs had pitiful ratings, and even with mainstream name recognition, as well as mainstream promotion of his music through late night shows and articles, all of his music was a massive flop. The Trump curse strikes again.
On the Statue of Liberty it says, "Give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor." Well, it's Americans who are tired and hungry and poor.